It's Victoria Rumble. Victoria Rumble Room is back on the air. I'm Robin Adair. With me, John Juricic, as always.
The Croatian Sensation, baby.
The Croatian Sensation is back in the room.
Yes, sir.
And boy, we've got so much to talk about, John. We've got our economic guru, David Schneider, standing by. We're going to get to him in just a moment. I just want to quickly comment on what's going on in the Middle East, where Donald Trump is taking, all the opportunities possible to win a Nobel Peace Prize by taking all these bows for creating peace in the Middle East. But it's early days. It's early days. Yes, they've exchanged hostages. Yes, Trump has been more effective than Biden or Obama in terms of doing something there. So you got to give him credit for that. But in terms of peace, when you've got the Hamas guys basically putting their uniforms away, going into street clothes, still with rifles, and there's 7,000 of them now on the streets basically running the place like they did as Hamas.
Yeah.
What's the future? We don't know. So that's a big question mark. And then the other bit of news that I think is kind of exciting, it also involves Donald Trump and Mark Carney, is this whole Keystone pipeline. And we had Dan McTeague on last week. He was saying this could be a huge boon for Canada, a huge boon for the economy. Imperial Oil just announced it's closing its offices in Calgary. So the oil industry is getting kind of antsy. Could this be the turnaround? This will be a question we have for our very important guest, who I'll let you introduce now, John, to our many viewers.
Absolutely. David Schneider and I have gone back a ways. I had hair back then, as I was a stockbroker, and he was he was also a stockbroker. Anyway, over the years, that's evolved into senior financial advisor, senior investment advisor. David has been commenting on all things finance and economy, and we just can't wait to bring him in. David, come on in, buddy. Well. David Schneider, we have you back. It turns out since we last chatted with you, our viewership has exploded. You're now talking to close to 82 million people. Well done, David. Clearly your comments are well received.
Well done to you too. Your shows have been great the last few weeks. Well done.
Well, we appreciate that. We appreciate that.
We bring you on because of clearly for some economic and business expertise, and there is no end of activity in that area of discussion. And so we got lots of questions for you to react to.
So I'd like you to, first of all, respond to what's going on with Donald Trump and Mark Carney. What should we be reading in this? Now we hear that the Keystone pipeline is back on the menu, and we've heard from others that this could be a real game changer for the economy. So right off the top, is the relationship between Canada and the United States changing as we speak?
Yeah, I think, as I mentioned before on podcasts, there is a long relationship between our Prime Minister, who's an adult in the room now, and Mr. Trump and the family. Carney has a long relationship with Brookfield and with the Trump family, and it's not talked about much with the media, but I think there is a relationship, and there's an understanding of Mr. Carney of the importance of energy. He has just been so careful his first 6 months. He got a lot of support from the so-called NDP base. He's got to get this budget through on the 4th of November. You can't have a non-confidence vote. And you get a development of a Keystone, that would just open the eyes to so many global investors. So I know Dan McTeague talked about it. It would be a game changer for sure.
You think the economy would immediately change? Do you think Canada's dollar would improve, that we'd see immediate improvement in the overall economy because of that?
I don't know if the economy won't improve, but just the perception. You need capital to come to this country. And right now, capital's not coming to the country for a number of reasons. And some of it's legally, some of it's how we deal with First Nations communities in terms of power and so forth. But a Keystone development would be huge. We need to get our nat gas down to Oklahoma and then down to the Gulf. That's what Mr. Rose at Tourmaline would love to have, and he's pushing it as well. So it would be good. But right now, there's no capital coming to Canada for resource projects. You get a change of attitude. It would be immensely important. And it would help our dollar immensely as well.
David, let's rumble you and I, baby.
Okay, baby.
Schlemationship. You know, the only thing that interests Donald Trump is how he can make money from this pipeline, and I think he will make money from this pipeline. So I think it will work. I want to talk to you about interest rates,
Right.
okay? Because I think that there's an interest rate disaster on the horizon. I am sensing that the American debt, of which is, I think, the largest in the world, which in large part was financed by China in for the past 20 years, is not going to be financed by China and or Europe or Russia for that matter. That will be immense pressure on interest rates. That'll cause Trump to fire the entire Federal Reserve Board, throw rates down to 1%. Please give me your learned and more objective viewpoints on these items I've brought up with you.
Yeah, I think everyone's worried about the debt. I had to go to a couple of the top U.S. strategists out there, Lynn Alden and another gentleman who I don't think has the near-term concerns on the U.S. debt. We have more concerns actually with the Canadian debt. With the budget coming up, we'll want to see what the reaction is. In the United States, you look at the 10-year bond. In Canada, you look at the 5-year bond. We look at those because those are the benchmarks for mortgage rates. And even though short-term rates came down with the rate decision a couple of weeks ago in the United States, the long rates went up. It didn't help. So it is a really key factor out there. And I think that's going to actually promote Mr. Carney to get some economic activity going, because you have a $100 billion deficit, what Stefan Marianne said at National Bank a couple of weeks ago. He's going to have to do things to calm nerves of the global investors, because we borrow a lot of debt on the federal, provincial, and municipal side. And everyone's waiting for November 1st and 4th, I should say, in terms of what the bond reaction is going to be to our debt levels. So that's going to promote the government to start being proactive, both on economic activity, but also cost reduction. We're not seeing that at all three levels of government, and that's going to be significant, and that's going to be super important. Kitchen table discussions for Canadians are going to be utility bills. We've always been fortunate enough in Canada where we have a smart regulatory market for our energy. We've had our energy. We have a great electrical system, but now there's strains. For instance, New Brunswick's going to be running out of energy in 3 years. They got to build $1 billion nat gas diesel project to maintain themselves. I said, interesting. Utility bills in Nova Scotia has gone up 24%. That's starting to hit. And she goes, look at PI. I go, what's happening in PI? She goes, well, they might run out of energy this winter. Why? I said, well, because of heat pumps. There's so many heat pumps that have been installed, they don't have enough electricity for it. That sounds like BC. There's huge issues in the Yukon. It's not a big population base, but you care about a cold climate like that they don't have power. Places like Quebec, they cannot take on new industrial projects. Why? Because they don't have any excess energy, just like British Columbia. So now you've got, even Alberta cannot expand their footprint. You got to have a time where every place in the world is trying to expand their electricity because of AI, and we can't do a thing. So it's really going to promote activity, and I think that's going to promote a lot of things to get energy projects going, because even when you can't even have Alberta expand themselves the way they want, because they have to maintain the grid on a solid basis. You can't give all our extra energy to AI companies. It's starting to be really problematic, and I think the utility bills is going to be the kitchen table talk over the next 3 to 6 months, big time.
I want to ask you about China.
Right.
We were talking, John sort of alluded to China when he was talking about interest rates. But, China is in a real trade war with the United States. We talk about our trade war, but because of the fact we have a North American free trade agreement, it protects a lot of trade that goes on between Canada and the U.S. while we squabble about things like steel, aluminum, and softwood lumber. But
Right.
the Chinese have a real bone to pick, and yet they seem to be doing well at the moment with their economy. Tell me about China reaching out to Canada and saying, if you allow us to bring in electric vehicles, if you allow us to do commerce with you without giant tariffs, we'll start buying soya from you, we'll start buying oil and gas from you, and that could be a boon to us and another big market. but it also could put us in arrears to the United States. Imagine if the Americans thought we were going behind their back with China. So it puts us in a curious position. Do you see any kind of a way that we can benefit from China without totally upsetting the Americans?
I can't see it. We're just a very small person, but I just thought it was interesting the reaction of the canola industry versus the battery and electric industry in Ontario. It was night and day. The canola is so huge, but it didn't get the support. Guess where the votes they want? They want it in Ontario. It's a tough one. I always think that the United States and China will figure things out because they both countries need each other. They need each other for trade. So they have this. Look what happened the previous week with Trump getting all upset and he's going to increase the tariffs. Always going to go back and forth. But
so if the Americans make peace with the Chinese, that opens the door for us to do the same?
I don't like that car market, the automobile market. We've always talked about the EV market in China can just take over Canada. What does that mean to Ontario? So especially with these EV mandates and so forth, and they can do cars at $12,000. Canadians need that right now, but it's going to be a big negotiation. But I think Mr. Carney he's a very smart man. He's not going to totally blow it. This debt situation is completely out of control, and our ability to get and attract energy for our domestic users, for people at home, to industries to grow, he's realizing that we have to do something. We just got to get past that budget on November the 4th.
Yeah, that this is the old liberal line that I've mentioned to a few of our folks online is that let's spend a lot now, but we'll get it back later. A consequence of the spending will be greater economic development growth. That never happened with Trudeau. And if it doesn't happen soon with Carney, that's going to be big political trouble for him. Now, yeah. I would like to shift gears. Now, I know that you're a senior investment advisor, and I realize that you're, if in that capacity you have to be a generalist, but I'm gonna dig deep here with you on real estate, as much as you know, okay, as much as you can help us with this. Toronto condo market is collapsing or collapsed. Vancouver condo market has collapsed. Right. Exactly when will that hit Victoria? I live in Victoria, and we all do. And how will that impact the economy in general?
Well, I think fair to say in Victoria, we never go up as much. We never go down as much in terms of prices. We never go crazy on prices, and we never implode. Victoria's still a very attractive market. Yes, they've overgrown the condo market in Victoria as well, because so many of the projects that were supposed to be for strata, because of financing, they couldn't do any pre-sales. They've all gone to rental. So the nice thing about it, we're going to have some rent reductions, and we are seeing it in Victoria because there's so many built. Things have slowed down. The difference in the guidelines with respect to international students have made an impact as well. And I think it'll level off. But the nice thing about Victoria, there's only one Victoria. There's only one community like Victoria, and people still want to move here from all different areas of Canada. And I think we're just getting a proper adjustment in the market. But Toronto and Vancouver, with the 60-story towers, huge. They thought the population growth was going to continue. That's where the implosion really is. And we're going through
they needed an implosion. They needed that, didn't they? I mean, it was really getting ridiculous. The expense. Yeah. I mean, people couldn't afford to live there in either of those cities.
No, they couldn't afford to live there, and that's what you get with real estate. Adjustments. I always say adjustments are painful but yet necessary. We needed it. And we also are getting a revisiting with municipal and provincial leaders saying the costs that you've imposed onto these developers just don't make sense too, because they got it too expensive. So it's nice to see some of these development charges being revisited. The municipalities are realizing they just cannot use real estate to fund their operations. So, it's leveling off. There's still only one BC. There's only one temperate area of Canada where people want to live 12 months of the year, and or some of it they go to Mexico maybe for other parts. But I see a little bit of stability, and you see that there's been no new development in Vancouver for 3 to 6 months, like nothing. So you all of a sudden get no new development. It catches up. the market will come back. So, you know, real estate is always fear and greed, just like the stock market, and we're just going through a necessary adjustment for sure.
David, you've known me for a while, and you know that I'm a very optimistic person. I'm generally,
Yeah.
almost always the cup is half full with me, but I'm not feeling that way these days with the economy. Let me list a few things, and I'd like to know what your folks are saying about 6 months from now. I
Right.
don't think that Carney is going to be able to crawl himself out of this debt. I think getting Canada to all go lockstep in one direction is going to be very difficult, especially with a BC premier who doesn't seem to want to do anything but maintain more debt and hire more government workers. I'm not optimistic about what's going on down south. I think the tariff wars are going to cause a recession down there, if not already. And I'm not optimistic about Trump following the rules and not having us causing a civil war so that he can trigger in his Insurrection Act. Okay, I think there's a lot of instability that I'm looking at for the next 6 months. What are your senior folks telling you?
Depends on their political situation. So much of it, the world is divided. The United States, even in Canada, you see it. You see it in communities. That's one of the roles of government, right? Divide the populace so they don't concentrate on the government. And they've sure done that. I'm not as pessimistic because attitudes are forced to change. Look at what's happening provincially, and I think that is the big one. The present administration and the premier has absolutely been attacked, not just by guys like you on Rumble Room, not just by Baum Palmer at the Vancouver Sun, but not only papers back east, but globally. Like, our debt situation and our policies do not make sense. So just in the last 3 to 6 months, they couldn't even use the term natural gas and LNG in their conversations. It's amazing how now it's supported, right?
Yeah.
It's supported, and it's going to be a big engine growth in the future. So they cannot continue with their ideology. The entire media and the public are going crazy. And it is interesting to watch our premier. Quite honestly, he's completely stressed out. He's doing videos every day, trying to get support back. It's not working. He's got to change his policies. And what it just takes is the media to understand the issues more. The media then takes it to the public, and you're really seeing, your work, other work going, wake up, everybody. And that's, I think, what's happening. I think Carney's a smart guy. He's stuck, quite honestly, with, Trudeau's group of people. He's got to make some changes. You see more and more people he's bringing from the outside to take over some key areas in terms of the administration. And I'm not pessimistic on the United States, because some of the tax rule changes, and the United States are leaders in AI development. McDonald-Laurier just came out with a report. It showed that something like 45% of people in the United States use Gen AI tools like ChatGPT and so forth in business. Canada, 21%. So we're behind. We have to do something about it. But the Americans, from a government perspective, corporate perspective, and individual perspective, are using the efficiencies of AI. And there's a lot of efficiencies and productivity that can develop. The Canadian banks, they don't talk about it a lot. They are using AI tremendously. And actually, it was Jim Thorne said, it's Brian Belsky of BMO said, the AI company of Canada is TD Bank. You know
what? You talk about AI the way we used to talk about the internet, and then we used to talk about social media. We knew the name, we knew the term, and I don't think it's really clear to people exactly what the ramifications are, including the people that are continually upgrading and developing artificial intelligence. I think it's a big game changer across the board on how the world conducts itself. But before we let you go, I've got to ask you one last question about the economy. Everybody was predicting gloom and doom when the tariffs started. When Trump started waving tariffs around, this was the end. Stock market was going to crash, and there was a lot of concern. And of course, the stock market itself responded to some of that talk and did, in fact, take some momentary lapses, but has come back up. How do you feel about that? Do you feel that the market now has stabilized because it's gotten used to Trump? Have the implementations of these different strategies, the tariffs, not been as severe on the economy as people
Right.
were fearing? What's your read on that, and what's your forecast for this next year in terms of, is this a decent time to invest?
I think it's a decent time to invest, but I think you have to be selective. There are some areas in the U.S. market that are extremely expensive, which that's where all the money flows to. But what you're seeing is a broadening of the market. And I think we are not even understanding anywhere close to the efficiencies developing with AI technology. Companies are using it, banks are using it. You see corporations are just starting to implement it. Next door, the AI explosion in the United States, they're second to none in terms of what they're developing. So I'm actually not that pessimistic, especially in Canada, because you've got the administration in Ottawa, you got administration here locally, that their policies don't work, and they've been called out, and they're changing it. And there's no other country in the world that has the resources what we have, not just energy with nat gas and oil, but you with uranium, with potash, and we're still 40 million people in the footprint of the United States. We have tremendous amount of upside. And I still remember what Stephen Harper said a few years ago. He's with Joe Lonsdale, and sure, we were going through a tough time back then. And he goes, the one thing about Canada is that we can turn ourselves around very, very quickly with your resources and just better policies. And I just see this movement of, don't want to use the term woke policies. They're being called out in Europe, where you see France, the UK, Germany, all, guess who's leading in the polls? Business-oriented administrations. Look what happened in Italy. It's coming to Canada. And I think be very positive. And it was nice to see this past month some peace in the Middle East, and hope to goodness it continues. I think that's really important as well.